What's up, guys? David DeSell here, your host of the Business with the Boys podcast. And as you may guess, Landon and I are still having trouble coordinating our calendars. He's been on a little bit of a road show. I have been traveling. I've been dealing with two different hurricanes in Florida. Thankfully, the damage that we've had is very, very minor compared to a lot of folks out there. So, our thoughts and good vibes are being sent to all those folks affected by the hurricanes here in Florida. But with that said, I wanted to properly introduce one of the most, I think, interesting guests that we've had to date, Lannin Zoltenko. And first of all, he was introduced to us by Aaron Newell. So, Aaron, thank you for this introduction. And when I first got the introduction from Aaron, I'll sort of minimize this so you can be surprised during the episode. But it was an introduction to a farm boy. And, so I had my preconceived notion. And then as we continued to chat in our intro call, as well as the podcast, I was like, man, this isn't a farm boy. This is a legitimate enterprise, not even a business, but an enterprise where they own and operate almost every aspect of the supply chain. And there's a curveball in this episode that if I gave you 100 guesses of what business Lanning got into during the last few years, you would not guess it. I'd almost bet my life on that. It is very much a curveball, but it's also very inspiring. It goes to show that just because you grow up in a particular business doesn't mean you need to stay in that business. So this is one of my favorite episodes to date. Landon is a super good dude. He's a Christ follower, as I mentioned, a farmer. And he is a quote, fix the money, fix the world absolutist. So based on that, maybe you do have a guess as to what he's gotten into over the last few years. But with that being said, quick thank you to the folks over at Landjet in Nebraska. These guys have an amazing business model. And one of the coolest things about it is it's not that expensive at all. Literally, it is for the time that you save and productivity that you gain in utilizing Landjet in between meetings, or even just splitting it amongst friends and colleagues to go to a sporting event or a concert or whatever it may be. Definitely check out Landjet, and by being a listener of this show, you do receive 10% off from them. So certainly reach out to the team over at Landjet. The contact information is in the show notes. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me as well. But with that said, let's get to the episode with Lannin, and we'll see you inside.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That mean you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back. Well, Lannin, first of all, welcome to the show, and also thank you to Aaron Newell for bringing us together. But before we actually dive in, we're going to set just one quick ground rule. And that ground rule is I can't call you Lannin, and Landon, I can't call you Landon because the people listening are that's going to get confusing. So we're going to go with LT for Landon Troyer, and we're going to go with LJ for Lannin. So from here on forward, we have LJ and LT.
That works.
All right. Well, let's rock, dude. I really appreciate you jumping on, and I'm super excited for this podcast. And we're probably gonna get, I don't know, 60-70% of the way through, and then people's minds are gonna be blown as to what you're doing now compared to what you grew up doing and still doing. But I guess walk us through a little bit about your background. So, where did you grow up? What did your family do? Because it's a family business, sort of help me understand what's going on.
Sure. So, Lannin Zoltenko, I'm a native of Jewell County, Kansas. We are on the Kansas-Nebraska border. I grew up in Kansas. My family farms in Kansas. I went to school in Nebraska. So I consider my hometown to be Superior, Nebraska, which is how Aaron and I know each other.
But I'll interject and say that he's got a bunch of purple K-State Wild stuff behind him for
I
those of you listening.
I do. I went with I was a go with the flow guy until about sixth grade. And my first like K-State experience that I remember was going and watching the Cats play in the Copper Bowl. And I don't even, I think it was Wyoming. I'm pretty sure it was Wyoming that they played. And we went to the Elks Lodge in Superior, Nebraska, and like they had like the satellite, like the big satellite out back pay-per-view. So I went and watched that, and I was hooked. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I was the only child in the Superior Public School system wearing purple.
I would absolutely believe that.
Yes. Yeah. So grew up on family farm here in Kansas, and graduated 1997 from Superior. Went to K-State for a year, studying ag business. Well, mostly I just studied gen eds, but the plan was ag business. And came home over the summer. The family farm had pivoted. There was a new business that was begun, and as part of that, and I kind of fell into that opportunity and been all forward ever since then. High school, my senior year of high school, and first, and the 1 year of college was a little different than most. I got married going into my senior year of high school. Had our first son, Chandler, over Christmas break. So he was a happy accident, as you can imagine. So that changes the college experience. Obviously, one, being married, two, having a child. So starving for one is different than starving for three. 1998, Zoltenko Farms Inc. Came into existence as a Vorstead operation. So that business is a service provider in the pig business, in the swine industry. So we collect semen from boars, which is the sexually mature male pig. We collect semen, we evaluate it for fertility, and we deliver that to commercial sow farms, commercial hog producers throughout 9 states. So started that in 98. My dad started that in 98. And I came back that summer, worked. We needed to grow the business. So I jumped in sales. I've always been very entrepreneurial and have had a knack for sales. Some would argue I've had a knack for getting my way, which is really what sales is.
And if you can sell semen, you can sell about anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's be honest.
That's exactly right.
Love that.
Yeah, so I worked essentially that responsibility for about 10 years. And then we started another business 2005. So sales primarily through 2007, 2008. We started another business in 2005 with a guy that went to high school with me. He worked for my family, and that was a dog breeding business called Cedar Lane Breeders. So we had 500 females and 100 males, and we raised everything from Cocker Spaniels on down to the tiniest little Yorkies and Chihuahuas.
That's not like the breeder that I've gotten my dogs from, where it's like, hey, every couple months we got 5 or 6. Like you guys had a ton.
Yeah, so we believed that was that was an industry that was ripe for disruption. And I still think we were right. We were just right at the wrong time. So anyway, I would challenge it. You could not lose money faster if you put it in the middle of the driveway and poured gasoline on it and set it on fire. It was absolutely terrible as a business. I got three lovely dogs out of it. I've got all kinds of pictures and videos of both my sons socializing the puppies and grooming and all those things. Like we took all the things that we understood about animal husbandry and health um, and animal care from the pig business, applied it to the dogs. But ultimately, um, the value that the market saw in that animal that was raised in ideal conditions with intentional practices was no different than the value that was raised in the back of a 57 Plymouth, somewhere in the backwoods of southern Missouri.
I would argue that some people actually prefer that because then that's taking them out of a bad situation almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, yeah,
Well,
that's unfortunate.
well, I want to talk about that because and I wasn't expecting to go down this path given our pre-call, but I want to understand, like, with you looking back, LJ, like, why did that business venture not work out? So you just alluded to, people found or didn't find the value in that, but like, why else? Because oftentimes when we have people on this show, they've experienced success, and people listening in just assume that what they touch turns to gold, but there's a lot of, trials along the way and a lot of quote unquote failures along the way. Unpack this one that didn't work out, because so many other things that you guys have done that we'll get to, I know has worked out based on our previous call. So let's spend a little bit of time here, if that's cool with you.
sure. Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think we were light on market research. So there were three partners, my dad and I and one other person. And while we trusted the other person, um, I think the three of us together didn't do enough market research, and we didn't recognize that the dominant player in that particular industry could crush us pricing wise if they wanted to. And we found out that they could, and they
And they
would,
would.
and they would. And then so once we figured that out, then we tried to pivot and go all retail. And like I was spending 10 grand a week on Google AdWords. Like we stood up a website in 4 days, and like it was terrible. So that was part of it. I think the other part of it is that we were a little bit cocky. Like we were like, yeah, man, this boar stud business turned to gold, and we can do this. But I think the most important thing is that we didn't pray about it. We didn't search God um, to ask His blessing on it going in. Um, and that's the one thing that my parents, Jim and Cheryl, who started ZFI, the boar stud business, they were extremely prayerful all throughout that process, because it was a big pivot for them, from going from being traditional farmers who are responsible for doing a lot of things to going into an industry that only veterinarians who have extensive education do the thing that you're going to be doing. So it's extremely technical. So they bathed that in prayer, and they offered it to God and said, if this is going to exist, it'll be because it's your will. And we didn't do that with Cedar Lane. So I believe that is a big chunk of it. And the other things didn't help. But that's what I think the issue was.
And and I don't know how transparent or specific you can be, but I'm curious to know, like, from when you started it to when you cut your losses, how
How
long
bad
was
was the
that?
bloodbath?
Like a month or a year or what? And
Oh
then
no,
to
no, no,
Landon's
no.
point, like was it we lost $10,000, $10 million? Like what was the ballpark? I want to know how big your tuition payment was for this learning lesson, I guess.
Yeah,
If you should have just stuck it out in college to learn, or if this was cheaper.
it was not cheaper.
Okay.
I think we started. So we actually we built our facility from scratch. Like we built it. So it was a very expensive facility that was purpose built. So uh, I don't remember when we even started that. Probably fall of 2004. I think April of 2005 is when we stocked. And then August of 2008 is when we exited.
Yeah.
So so that was a whole lot of pain for a long period of time. And that's, but I think that's about the, when you're both emotionally and financially significantly invested in something. I think it takes about that amount of time before you go, this isn't just a dip.
Admit it's tough
This
to
isn't
admit
meant to be.
defeat. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well,
And
Land,
as far as the tuition payment, I mean, it was well into the seven figures.
Yeah.
well, uh, LT and I, if I abide by my rule at the beginning, LT and I, we do exit planning and value acceleration, and usually the exit is a celebration. You use the word exit. I think that's a nicer way to say we shut these doors and move and moved on.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
let's
Definitely.
let
Yeah. So we had Cedar Lane, 2005 to 2008, and then somewhere, so right at the end of that, I would transitioned out of my sales role and into the general manager role for ZFI
It,
because my dad, who was one of the partners, he's like he was going all in, like we're gonna fix this thing. It's the last gasp when the general goes to the front line and tries to save the day. And no knock on him for not saving it. It wasn't savable at that point, but he tried.
Mhm.
So it that created an opportunity for me to to step into a role that I was doing some things in, but not a lot of the things. You don't really know what it means to be responsible for all of it. There is nothing that prepares you to be responsible for all of it until you're actually in the seat, and you're the one that's supposed to have the answer to the question.
not supposed to have the answer. You do have the answer,
Yeah,
whether you have it or not,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Whatever you say is the answer, whether or not it's the right one.
Yes.
That was like a key in in my early life, and actually late high school and post college. So for about 5 years, I did the Amway thing and made no money. Listened to a lot of good leadership development stuff, and one of the quotes that I absolutely remember, one of the guys talking about is, "You make a decision and then you make it right. You're not going to make right decisions. You make decisions and then you make them right." And that has served me well because my default programming, I'm a high C, high D. So I really want to gather all the information. I can overanalyze, and I've come to understand that I just have to be willing to make a decision and then make it right, regardless of what happens.
LJ, you and I would make great business partners. I need,
I,
as I,
I've got an idea for a
I
dog
can make a
kennel.
decision like that. I need
I was
somebody
gonna
that
say
analyzes the shit out of things.
LT's fast and loose, so he needs some.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So
um,
LJ, real quick, just before we keep moving forward here. So what did the ZFI look like at that point as far as employee makeup, revenues? I mean, was it just kind of you, your pops, and then a couple of, farmhands, or was it maturing into an actual kind of organization
oh no,
and really had some teeth?
I mean, it was a good, it was a solid business that was profitable. It was about a third of the size that we are today. But my dad in his role was was involved in production, pretty much every day in some form or fashion. And so we transitioned out of kind of the owner operator mode into whatever my understanding of a professionally managed business was. We started moving that direction, trying to move that direction. But like head count wise, I'm guessing we probably had 15 total, something like that.
Yeah, So you were overseeing some people then.
Yeah. Yep.
There was some accountability there.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And then so we grew the business, and we had some other opportunities that came up. In order to take advantage of one of those opportunities, we needed to take the delivery portion of the ZFI business and split it out into a separate company for liability purposes. Because as anyone would understand, if you got delivery vehicles on the road, especially ones that are on the road for, a fleet, a couple million miles a year, you got some liability. So we split that out. So that became ZFI Transport. Those opportunities ended up not coming to fruition, or we didn't pursue them, but they forced us to make that change. And we've got an operations and management team in place on the transport side, so that's a separate business. Necessity brought us to where, we've got a fleet of 25 vehicles around here, maybe 30, probably 30 when you throw all the personal ones in. So it's like, well, it's expensive getting them worked on, and it's hard to get them worked on. So we added a repair shop. Tried that was one of those things where it looked like you could make some good money taking in outside vehicles. Turns out all you do is get dirty and greasy working on other people's stuff in Superior, Nebraska. So we stopped doing that. And my mechanic is just thrilled because, we take good care of our stuff. The delivery fleet, like the average vehicle in the fleet has 400,000 miles on it. The top end of that is 957,000 miles.
Tell me you're going to break 1 million with it. You got to, right?
Yeah. At that point, we're trying to limp that one across the finish line. Usually
just to say you did it.
Just to say we did it. Yeah. And that'd be the second one that we've taken that far.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So when you say delivery vehicles, LJ, are you talking, do these have to be like refrigerated type units in there to transport?
Yeah.
Big semen?
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like. Is it, the vans, are they Freightliners? What are they?
Yep. So we for many years ran Suburbans with the Seaman Transport unit in it. So it's basically a big refrigerator inside the Suburban, and we transitioned to pickups with like a slide in, kind of like you see the ice things that go in the back. Ours is a smaller version of that we have built locally, that I designed. We have built locally. So the pig semen needs to be transported at 60 to 64 Fahrenheit, or stored at 60 to 64 Fahrenheit, so you don't freeze it like in nitrogen, the way that you would bull sperm. So we're doing that 3 days a week. So we collect Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Routes leave Monday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, Friday afternoon, and go out throughout the night. We cover Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Missouri. I don't think we're going into Oklahoma right now. So we go all the places. Yeah. Well, we have, and we're not currently. We have gone to Colorado. We're not currently. We have gone to Wyoming. We've gone to Texas. We've gone to Arkansas. We've gone to Illinois. I went to Indiana for a while. So it just kind of depends on where the business is at. It's interesting because, as you can imagine, the logistics of doing all that is pretty daunting. But the business doesn't, you don't say, I'm going to build a route here, and then you build an efficient route. The business follows the relationships. So it's always, hey, can you deliver to this place? And somehow that place is always further away from us than what the previous one was. So it's just the way you just say yes, right?
Survive and adapt.
Say yes and put it in gear. So
How,
yeah,
how I'm curious, how long does the like semen last? Meaning like if you find yourself going to the same location over and over again, can you have like a storage facility there that's, properly climate controlled, to like limit the amount of times that you go there, or is that not an option?
yes and no. There's a strong preference for freshers better, but there's a limit to what people are willing to pay for on that. Um, so we could deliver once a week, no problem. We have several clients that only take 2 deliveries a week, and get along fabulously. The majority take 3, just because fresher's better.
Mm, gotcha. Okay, so in the transport business, that is just serving your core business. You're not leasing out transport to other companies like you attempted to with the auto repair, correct?
That's correct. It serves. I mean, it provides fleet services to what I lovingly refer to as the Zoltenko sphere. So, but primarily of that is delivering the mail. So our ZFI's motto is, we grow bacon seeds, and transport is we deliver the mail.
Love
I
that.
like that. You need to get
So
into
we
the drone space.
That's an interesting concept.
I
sounds
mean,
like based on your reaction, it sounds like you're like, I've been thinking about that recently and seeing where that can
It
go, but you're
yeah,
not going to divulge.
well, I mean, it's been suggested. I mean, during the filter that I put everything through, or the test that I put everything through, is what is going to work 365 days a year. What is going to work in the winter? February 17th, when it's minus 20, the wind's
yep,
blowing 30 miles an hour, and there's ice on the road, so to speak. And keep in mind that what we do happens at night for the most part. And as I mean, we've looked at, owning a plane, fractional lease of a plane. The timing's great. The economics kind of suck on that. But we've got this biological product that we have to protect, in extreme conditions. But we've yet to find anything that's better than what we're currently doing. We've certainly looked at it, and my transport operations manager, he's absolutely dead set on getting us in an electric vehicle at some point. But that's the test that's the roadblock we keep coming up against. It's February 17th. It's minus 20 degrees. The wind's blowing 30. What is that driver? How long does that battery last? And what's that driver going to do setting in, Diamond County, Iowa, uh, at the bottom of a hill, right? I mean, like someone can actually die in that process. So we have to be mindful of that.
for sure. Just the deadhead on the way back. It seems like if you could figure out a way to transport something back to turn a profit, as opposed to having half the trip profitable
Yes.
would be really nice.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
what I'm curious. So I've seen, like my mom used to do the books for a farm in the town that I grew up. And that farm just kind of did the same thing and still does the same thing that they've always done. And it's an identical business with maybe a new sign out front and some new people working there. Um, you guys from this conversation and the previous conversation that we had seem to always be looking to grow and improve and develop and uh, just like do new things. Why are you not complacent like a lot of people are? What is it that drives you guys to continue to innovate, grow, and expand?
Um, well, I mean, the reason that I'm that way is that's the way I was raised. So I'll absolutely credit my parents for that. My dad had a vision when I was young of, that he would have, he'd have 5,000 sows, and he would send 20,000 market hogs per year to slaughter, and he would own his own packing plant and distribute that meat within I think it was a 150-mile radius. And when you say that out loud today, like that sounds ridiculous, and on like that's ridiculously small in the scale of what the industry is today. But in 1985, to even posit that that was a possibility, was very forward thinking. He's done a lot of firsts, and it's so that's where I learned it. Is they always looked forward, they always looked for the better way, and
I think,
caught or taught, I don't know, but that's the way I was raised.
and I think, again, growing up in Hershey, Nebraska, and having a, semi-ag background, I think the environment today kind of is forcing a lot of, at least if you're on the smaller end of the farm scale, right? I mean, so much of it has gone corporate, um, that it's almost a necessity. I mean, you can't just, $7 corn is amazing, but it's just a rarity that it happens, and everything else around you is going up, right? And fuel costs and fertilizer, and then, you're trying to just get yield and not know what you're going to lock in prices at. And it's a different environment. So I think it's one you've kind of got to be creative in, right?
That's absolutely correct. I mean, if you want to excel, um, if you want to be able to grow the operation, if you want to be able to grow your financials, you got to do something different. You got to find a niche. If you don't, you won't. And
I think
you know
also if
what?
you want to be multi-generational, right? I mean, if you want, at least where I'm from, a lot of people grow up on the farm and that's their goal, right? Well, so many acres only can support so many mouths. And so if if you don't kind of get creative and bring in some other lines of business and ways to make money, what are you going to tell son number three or daughter number three? Sorry, the first two are here first and is what it is, right? Nobody really wants to have to tell their kids that. And
Yep.
so I think that's a lot of it as well.
You're absolutely correct. I'm fifth generation. I have two sons, Chandler and Taryn, who are six. Got a grandson who I hope will be the seventh, and a second grandson that'll be here in about 6 weeks, who I hope joins him. Um, I have a brother, and he's got, oh goodness gracious, 6 kids now, I think. Um, and he's not currently involved in the farming operation. He was, and then he and his wife moved away, and he's doing some other stuff. But I know that his kids, my dad's other grandkids, have interest in farming, and that's something that was always very important to my dad. And you don't get it until you have kids of your own. And even then, I got it less until I had my grandson. And I go, and so you really, like, that's been a real reflective opportunity for me to go, okay, even at 45, I'm at a life stage where my focus needs to shift to not accumulation, but being able to pass this on. So this farm has operated the cropping and livestock operation, not the boar stud specifically, but the farm has been here, for 6 generations now. And I take that responsibility very, very seriously. That it won't be on. I won't allow it to be on my watch that that it fails.
Yeah, that's congrats on that. I mean, that's unheard of. That's awesome.
Whether
That's not an easy feat to accomplish. Every time you get another generation, that the odds of that goes down significantly. So
Yeah, it doesn't happen accidentally, and that's
no, it
I
has
think
to be intentional.
there's a lot of there's a lot of narrative out there about about rich farmers and and they just want to hoard the land and this, that, and the other. But the reality is that if you're primarily an agriculturalist, you live your life very, very frugally, and you plow everything that you derive monetarily goes back into the operation. And you do that so that you can hand debt-free assets off to your children and your grandchildren so that they can remain competitive, so they can do the thing that you loved to do and that you hope that they love to do, and not have to treat it as a side gig. And I'm not saying that it's bad or wrong to have an off-farm job, off-farm income. What I'm saying is that it's rare to not need it anymore. It's rare. So to be able to, that's what ZFI, the addition of ZFI to our farming operation. So if you think of the farming operation as the core, and ZFI as a mechanism to allow multiple generations to be involved in farming and to grow our land base, and then other things that we've done and continue to do serve a single purpose, and that is to ensure that we can remain farming and that we can do it, and that we can be financially viable in doing it. That's really the center of the solar system that everything orbits around.
Yeah, because it price per acre these days, it takes generations for it to even cash flow and make sense, right? I mean, you don't go buy farmland right now it's just it. If you're going to grow crops on it, it doesn't cash flow, right? You and I, we
right.
all know that it's not going to cash flow. In fact, the finance guy in me would say the smart farmer is the one who just says, "Yep, thanks, Dad, I'm done. Boom, sell it and cash out, right? And then leave your family generational money." But it's again, then the kids don't learn the work ethic. They don't appreciate the hard work and what goes into running an operation. And it's again, the easy button here is to just say, "Sweet, thanks, sell it, be done," right?
One of the things that's been unique in my life that I don't know, I have no frame of reference for what it would be like to not know what you were going to do the rest of your life.
It'd be terrible.
Every day of my life, I've known that I was going to be a farmer. I've always known. And so that is the one thing that it provides, and not because I had to, but because that's what I wanted to do. And the challenge is how do again, I graduated high school in 97, which, so I was a youngster during the crisis years in the 80s. There's a lot of people my age, and maybe a little bit older, that didn't come back to the farm because the economics sucked so bad. Like you had to go get a job someplace else. And my parents made the choice, and I participated in it. Like we did not take vacations. We ate very simple meals. You didn't eat out, and you did that so that you could hang on and be able to move the ball forward and grow the pie, so to speak, to mix metaphors, for the next generation. and I'll be the beneficiary of that. My sons, hopefully my grandsons, grandchildren will be the beneficiary of that as well.
Whether, you think to being a kid, growing up on the farm to now helping run the farm and teaching your kids, to run the farm and everything else that you guys have going on. What are some of the generational, let's say, complexities, challenges, but also like some of the enjoyments that you have? Like I remember, I hired a family member when I was a financial advisor to help on my team, and it was like the best and the worst decision that I ever made. And that doesn't even, come close to explaining it. And people always say, like, don't hire family, don't hire family. You guys are like, we basically only hire family. Obviously, I'm exaggerating there, but you're keeping everything in the family. So what's that like? You guys still enjoy Christmas and Thanksgiving together,
I think it's different though, David. Like, again, knowing what it's like growing up on the farm and then in the seat that I'm in now, like LJ, you'd probably say this, right? I mean, you don't know any different. You've been in it since the beginning, and it's not really a job; it's a lifestyle. I mean, it is your life. I mean, would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah. Yes. I mean,
It's a
yes, that
cohesive
is.
unit rowing the boat forward through shitty times, through great times, and all things in between. And that just kind of is what it is.
I would say there's multiple times per week that I have to remind myself it's a privilege and a privilege and a pleasure um, to be able to work with my family. So uh, like on this, so if you think of the Zoltenko sphere, so I'm responsible for the Borsted operation, which is a technical business, highly technical business with a lot of employees. I'm responsible for the transport operation. It's a very demanding, a lot of employees. Um, my dad operates the farming business, and my son, his grandson, is the operations manager for the cropping portion of that. So there are, and in ZFI, my wife runs Borsted operations, so she is a direct report to me. And our youngest son, Taryn, is the technical operations specialist, which is just a fancy term for you got to figure shit out. Like he just graduated high school, or excuse me, just graduated college. Um, so his job is to like take notes and work on special projects right now. So that's a whole lot of family
Dynamic.
and dynamic. And I I in particular, and I guess I'll proudly say that I work the hardest at having healthy boundaries in that. Like I'm a Dave Ramsey guy. Not quite there on the debt free thing yet, but I love
Because
his
you're a business owner.
Yeah, in a capital intensive environment.
Yes.
But
The
he tells
principles are
us,
great.
yeah, absolutely. And so he tells the stories, tells the story about, like actually Henry Cloud tells this story as well. He, like the father goes on the manufacturing floor and he sees his son, chewing out an employee, like being verbally abusive to him and he fires him. And then later on in the day, the son comes to the office and he puts his dad hat on. He says, son, I heard you were fired today. How can I help? Like if you just apply that and go like, how would this look if we were going to do it healthy and we were going to set our ego aside, how would we act? And then we should also recognize that we're human and we have all these family things. So we're not going to be a dick about it, but we're all going to agree to be really intentional about having these boundaries. And like when we're here, we use like our name and we don't go by dad and grandpa and sweetie. I mean, just little things like that. And it's not perfect. Some family members struggle with it more than others, but we're making it work. And generally, you asked about Christmas. So keep in mind, I was 17 when I got married. We just somewhere between child 1 and child 2, 6 years, I heard and I decided to adopt the concept that my number 1 and number 2 goals in life as a parent, as a father, was 1, to raise Christ followers, and 2, to raise children who wanted to spend time with us when they were older, when they didn't have to. And for the most part, I think we've accomplished that. And that is a great reward as a father, is to be able to get the kids, get everybody together, and the laughter returns to the house, and the inside jokes. And I mean, it's truly, it's the thing that it's one of the things, the thing that where I'm the most present and like most locked in and completely forget about everything else that's going on in the world.
Love that.
That's super cool.
And it sounds like you set them up for the option, at least with being college educated, that they could have gone and done their own thing, but obviously they've chose to come back and join the family operation, which speaks to success in that regard for sure.
Yep.
Let's take a hard right turn. So you made mention earlier about a side hustle, that term. And you stumbled onto something that I guess you could consider was on the side that then turned super legit. Walk us through how a farm boy like you got into crypto and Bitcoin and Ethereum and what that ultimately turned into today.
Okay. Yeah. So the other side of my life is, so to speak, is Wildcat Blockchain. And Wildcat Blockchain empowers financial freedom in rural America by supporting the Bitcoin network. So I became very concerned about the money printing that was happening during COVID. Benefited from it. I got a PPP payment, which helped fund some of this. I'm not entirely certain I'm supposed to say that, but anyway,
might have fund some of this.
Possibly, definitely helped keep the doors open.
Yes.
So benefited from the money printing, but I was just appalled by it. I mean, that was the latest round of it, but I could see the writing on the wall.
There is no free lunch, right?
There is no free lunch.
I thought the exact same thing.
If everybody's lunch is free, then no one's lunch is free. So I started looking around, and I would like to say that I came about it very principled, that I was an Austrian economics, trained pleb, but that's not true. What is true is that I just kind of stumbled onto it, and I asked my IT guy at the time, about it, and he's like, well, this is how you do it, and there's this thing called Coinbase, and you go on there and you set up an account, and blah blah blah. So I bought some Bitcoin in like December of 2020. I don't remember what I paid for it at the time. Like January, like over Christmas break. Farming is a 24/7 thing. Our business, 52 weeks a year, regardless whether it's Christmas or not. We're doing collection and delivery and all those things, but like the administrative side kind of shuts down for like 2 weeks. Like you're just doing like the core things. So I had kind of like 2 weeks to just, play around with this. And I was going on, he's like, well, check out this website. And I was like, man, like you can actually make some money doing this. Really? Like, how do you do this? So we started messing around with it and got into mining. And so our bore stud facilities are air conditioned, air conditioned, positive pressure, HEPA filter. We use geothermal, like everything shower in, shower out. So like we understand, we understand technology, we understand airflow, we understand electricity, like all the things.
Coincidentally,
got an
all
IT guy.
things that are very key in mining crypto.
Yeah, yeah. It was amazing how that worked out. So started buying. I mean, I bought some like $900 S9s on eBay, which I mean, the only time they were worth that much is when I bought them because no other human would pay that kind of amount of money. I bought a whole bunch of GPUs, so I was mining Ethereum, mining Bitcoin. Bought some L3s, was mining. That's when Doge was like. I bought them right before Doge started taking off. So anyway, kind of really got into it accidentally, hot and heavy. Just kept buying because it looked like it was making money. Around April, ran out of power. So that was like January 2021. Around April, kind of ran out of power capacity here at the farm, and started looking for like what do you do like if you actually wanted to do this as a business, and then went to my hometown Superior, started talking about power rates. I already owned land there. Like, oh well, I guess we could just go get one of those container things and set it up, and so we started down that path. June of 21, the market crashed. It became very apparent that paying 13 cents for power out of the farm wasn't the answer. So I had to shut some stuff down. Were
you able to negotiate a power rate with Superior with how much you were going to be pulling?
Yes and no. I mean, they created a new rate that reflected the unique characteristics of the crypto load, which is of a mining load, which is essentially perfect power factor, 100% load factor unless you don't want it to be, so infinitely curtailable. So we had our rate reflects those things. They started with their industrial rate and they just modified it and did like an economic development rate. So then I don't know. I mean, I spent a ton of money because everything I was buying was overpriced. By that time, the market's in the bull at that point, and everything takes twice as long, costs 3 times as much. Bought a container out of Canada. Absolutely got hosed on the electrical on it. Like it was supposed to be ETL certified, which is like a national or internationally recognized. Not even close. Like the electrical inspector came and he's like, "Don't touch anything." So we basically had to tear everything out, put everything back in, the right way, fix all that. Like it was a near-death experience for the business, and it wasn't even a business at that point. It was just me self-mining.
With a bunch of capital on the line.
With a bunch of capital on the line, like more money than I had personally ever invested in anything up to that point, other than my home.
Yeah.
And my dad had actually, he's like, he was invested not in the business, but like he bought miners at that point. So when we're buying this stuff, so keep in mind it's like this January, February, March of 2021. Like we're buying this stuff and like we're bringing it here to the office and setting up the GPU rigs, and then you carry them back out, and so like he sees like the IT guy like walking in and out with all this stuff, and he's like, "What are those things you got there?" And
I'm just envisioning it like these farm boys like just unloading a bunch of computer shit. Like let's plug this stuff in and figure out how to make it go.
I got my bibs on.
Got your overalls on. Hell yeah!
I'm going out to the combine here after we get done. So he's like, I mean, Dad's 70 years old at that point, 72, yeah. And it's like, so Noah's like, oh, basically, they're computers, but just think of them as space eaters. He's like, so then we start talking about it, and he's a huge fan of the Gold Rush series on Discovery.
Oh yeah.
So I was just explaining this, and everybody's first explanation of Bitcoin is like as digital gold. He's like, digital gold. He said, so those are like trommels, right? I'm like, yeah, those are like trommels. He's
Yeah.
like, okay. He's like, well, why don't you get me some of those? Okay.
Done.
So anyway, I've got my stuff, got dad's stuff. Like, power cost sucks, market price sucks. Like, we got to get this thing going in Superior. Buy the thing, own ground. Jewel County, Kansas. There's no zoning of any kind here. I've never had to pull a permit for anything other than like a lagoon. Superior,
Beautiful.
Nebraska, in town, not the case. So it turns out your neighbors can complain about stuff, and people tend to complain about things that they don't understand. And I mean, I don't fault them for being concerned about it. It was inconvenient, and it kind of irritated the way they did it. So anyway, we got NIMBY'd on site one on the land that I already owned. Went and talked to the city. And they are like, hey, we've got the industrial park. It's been a goat pasture for 35 years. You could buy a couple like lots there. So I did. Bought 3 lots in that, and about got NIMBY'd again by the people half a mile away that thought it was gonna give everyone cancer and cause their hair to fall out, and take all the power from the hospital, and because kids, and
Yep.
so on and so forth. So made it through that, and by let's see, so January of 2022, first actual hosting goes online. So Wildcat's business is a hosting business. So it's care and feeding of the miner, air, internet, and power, and keep everything running, right? So hosting business comes online January 2022. By June of 2022, we've got 3 megawatts online in Superior, and during that time period, I partnered with a couple guys that were financial services, traditional IT, like really understood the technical side of things, a skill set that I didn't have. And so we were off and going. Added more capacity throughout 2022, 2023, 2024. So we're at 22-ish megawatts. So call that
Wow.
like 7,000 machines, something like that, 7,000 miners that we operate today. And we've got a runway to add another 25 to 50 megawatts, basically double the business in 2025.
So that's what I was going to ask. I was like, I don't have context as to what a megawatt represents, but you're saying of the 22, that's literally 7,000 pieces of equipment inside of
Yeah.
the warehouse.
Yeah, we do. We do. A lot of people would call them containers. We say modules. So they're micro data centers. So either 700 kilowatts or 300 kilowatts, depending on which model that we're using. Each computer, each miner. So computer, miner, hash server, it's all the same thing. Each one is about 3,000 watts, and most people's homes pull about 3,000 watts. That's
Their
about
whole home.
like their whole home. Like at any given time, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 watts. So when we turned on in Superior, we more than doubled the city's power usage.
Because it's like adding 7,000 homes.
Well, yeah, I mean that
You got 7,000 miners, right?
yeah, that in Superior, it would have been about 1,000 machines, give or take.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
when we did that in Superior, about doubled the city's power usage.
Wow.
But yes,
So it's a lot of power.
it's a lot of power. The neat thing about our approach is we're in rural areas. We're on rural substations. And so transmission and transformation has all been paid for by the patrons already.
Yep.
So the only thing that the utility needs to do is convert more input into electrons and sell it to us. So we are, the utility in Superior has not experienced a electrical rate increase since we came online, if that tells you anything. So
they're making up the delta.
Yeah, and it's a transformational opportunity for rural utilities and rural communities. So we employ five full-time people now, a couple part-time, have multiple contractors, have put millions of dollars into local contractors, electricians, construction, site development. We pay a lot of money in sales tax on power, and all of it is, I mean, we pay for all of that. We go to a site, like we pay for all the upgrades to be able to service, because like in order to get the rate that we qualify for, that's what's required, and we do it happily. It allows these rural areas, these rural utilities, to monetize capacity that they have built out, and without having
with very little infrastructure.
Yeah,
I mean,
without having to make any capital outlay.
Yeah.
And then do you, I guess two things. One is, do you need to go directly to the power company, or is there enough surrounding land, and do the economics work out to where solar could make sense? Have you looked into that?
The
solar is very tough, right? Hydro is your optimal thing. If you could get right by a hydro dam, right? That would be much more efficient than solar, I would think, or wind.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, so the issue with renewables in general, with solar and wind in particular. So let's just say solar. When I say renewables, I'm going to talk about solar and wind. Is they're intermittent,
especially in the Midwest where we're not in a desert.
Yeah, well, I mean, solar is intermittent regardless of what you do.
It is, yeah. Right.
I mean, and turns out people still want, Netflix and chill at night, right? You still want some air conditioning.
Well, they can at least chill. They may not be able to Netflix.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, if the sun's not blowing or the sun's not shining, the wind's not blowing, you've got an issue. So for every, just think of it in terms of if you don't have a large flexible load like what we do, and your job is to make sure that the power is always available for the people, and you go from, as a utility operator, you're going from coal, nuclear, and gas, things that you can dial up or down anytime you want to, and they're absolutely there all the time. You never have to worry about it. And you're displacing that with things that are there when conditions are right, but are not load following in any way. So they don't, they don't adjust based on what the load is. They just adjust based on what they can output. You've got a huge problem. You got a huge reliability problem. And oh, by the way, you've got to constantly move your all of your firm generation up and down in order to achieve this 60 hertz frequency that we all love so much, which is incredibly important. So essentially what's going to end up happening is you're going to either have to put in batteries, which are extremely expensive, and I would argue environmentally irresponsible. You're going to have to add firm generation, megawatt for megawatt, gigawatt to gigawatt, 1-to-1. You're going to have to add that. So you got to have a firm generation backup for every intermittent renewable. So now, rather than reducing cost, you've cut the cost, or you've doubled the cost, or if not more. Or you go, we realize that we're going to have sun during the day, we're going to have wind part of the time at night, part of the time not. Like all this complex thing, what we really need is we need a way to monetize all of this this intermittent renewables build out that's happening. We need to be able to monetize it, but pull that back and reclaim that at a moment's notice. And you'd go, well, who in the right mind is going to do that? Like what possibly could serve that function? There is only one answer, only one, and that's Bitcoin.
Yep.
Bitcoin is digital energy, period.
So I
Hence
guess
California's idiots leadership saying, oh, everybody's gonna go to electric cars, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you can't charge your electric cars.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work. Like you still have to have dependable energy, right? It's
Certainly.
like, oh, it sounds great in theory, right? But oh, don't mind Africa where they're mining the cores for these batteries and lives are being taken all the time in that shit show because it sounds great on theory for our carbon credits in California and we've got to get to all electric vehicles. But please don't charge them, at least not all at once when you get home from work because it crashes our grid.
Right.
so.
Yeah.
If history repeats itself, next on the roadmap is you have to buy the power plant, right?
That would be a logical next step, wouldn't it?
It
Or
would.
buy some land that has some serious water moving through it and get to a hydro facility.
It's a little bit flat here in Nebraska.
Yeah.
So that's not at the top of the list.
And forgive my ignorance, but you get these, 7,000 machines, you alluded to millions of dollars of development in this. And is it all, again, forgive my ignorance, but is it all to mine Bitcoin and just hold it? Or like what's the function, the functional
LJ,
output?
yeah, how do you monetize this, LJ, for our listeners that don't really know kind of how the crypto side of things works?
Landon and I.
Yeah. I've got enough clients that I've got a pretty good grasp on it. So,
All right, well then
yes.
for me.
Yeah. So first of all, Wildcat is a service provider in this space. So we are not a mining company. We are a service provider. ZFI Stud LLC, Landin Troyer Family Office LLC. Those would be our clients, and so they own the computers and send them to us. And those computers that they typically are sending to us are computers that mine Bitcoin by supporting the Bitcoin network, by securing the Bitcoin network. So what should you do? Well, my view when I got in to mining, thinking that mining itself was a business, margins were very, very high because Bitcoin was mooning. There was no infrastructure built out here in the US, and China was off and on banning the mining of Bitcoin. And then they completely banned it, air quotes,
So the government can do
of
it.
21. Exactly. So the government gets to pick and choose who does it in June of 2021. So during that time frame, like profitability in US dollars was very, very good. And if you were smart like me, you put all those proceeds on Celsius and then lost it all. Yeah, that was great. It was great. Great move. The
advisor in me, LJ, would tell
brain
you
information.
diversification is key.
Yes, agreed.
Stick to Bitcoin and Ethereum. Those are your, as Matt Taylor would say, your Pepsis and Cokes of the world.
Yep. So what do you do? My belief is that the act of mining is there to acquire the underlying asset in a tax advantaged way. So if you're a miner, If you're buying the computer, you can Section 179 that. And if you're paying for hosting, so hosting is all in. That's paying the power bill and all of the repairs and all those things. You're taking that as a business expense. So even if you didn't make any money, if the net positive of that was not, if you didn't generate more Bitcoin in US dollar terms than what you paid in hosting, you would still be doing it at a insert tax bracket percentage
arbitrage.
here. Arbitrage. That's correct. So that is my view, is that all of these pubcos that are going out and taking investor money and building sites and buying miners and selling Bitcoin to buy more miners are mining one thing, and that's investors. They're mining investors. If you want to own Bitcoin, either go buy it or buy your own machines, send them to someone that knows what they're doing, and have them hosted. And guess what? It's not a great business right now because it's a commodity production business. Bitcoin is a commodity. Daddy Gensler said so. It's a commodity business, and commodity businesses go through boom and bust cycle. We have a 4-year cycle in Bitcoin, and I think we're going to, I think we're 3 months away. I think it's going to be right around the first of the year that things get really, really interesting. But I've had a couple shivers go up my leg as they say, the past couple of weeks when it's taken off, it's like, oh baby, here it is. And then no, it wasn't it, but it's coming. But anyway, that's my argument, is that, so if you got $1 million to spend half of it on buying machines, put the other half in something that gives you a little bit of interest, and use it to pay your hosting so that you never have to sell any Bitcoin. That's the thing to do, because the whole thing is a play on the future value of Bitcoin, and you can achieve it with mining in a tax advantaged way.
Because every so much you mine, you get a quote unquote Bitcoin yourself.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. I mean, it's so there's 10 million Satoshis, 10 million sats per Bitcoin. So if you think of it in terms of sats, you'll feel better because you get like 10,000 sats, as opposed to 0.0001 Bitcoin, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, you can, like, there's calculators out there that can tell you that. I mean, anybody that wants help with that, I'm happy to help. Frankly, there's a whole lot of stuff on YouTube that's a lot more elegant explaining this. Highly recommend, not to plug someone else's podcast, but the Sailor series on Breedlove's What is Money is fantastic. Anything with Michael Saylor is an absolute mind-blowing exercise in learning how to think about the world differently. And if you want the technical stuff, there's 99 Bitcoins and Bitcoin University and all those other things. They'll all do a better job. But in my view, human time, physical land, and Bitcoin are the only 3 things that are truly finite and limited in this world. And physical land is actually a little bit of a gray area, because when you go to the coastal zones, they actually make more land.
Yeah, the Saudis are doing it.
Yep, exactly. So I should say farmland in the rural U.S.
There you go.
Human time, farmland in Jewell County, Kansas, and Bitcoin are the only 3 things that are absolutely finite, and there'll never be any more of them. So you should be mindful about where you invest your time, which is what we're all doing.
I think that's a perfect way to end this and start wrapping up. One of the things we do, LJ, is ask all of our guests a book that's had an impact on them as a way to distill a reading list for our audience. That said, you couldn't pick just one, because there's a few that have had an impact on you. Good to great extreme ownership, which is one of my favorites, and the comfort crisis, which Hunter Terpeny, who is on our show, recommended that to us. But just quick 60 seconds on each one. Why'd you pick them? What's the impact that it's had on you and in your life?
Yeah, I've been a reader for a long time, and it's something that's important to me. I came up through the kind of the Maxwell school in the early days when you actually had CDs and tapes before that. In fact, I've got a Les Brown cassette tape set around my office here. Still one of the best motivational speakers that I've ever heard. It's
Yep.
fantastic. So I believe that leaders are readers, and because that's what I believe, that's what I try to live. I've had to shift that to readers are listeners. So my adaptation to that is like I'll listen to a book twice and consider that I've read it because
That's fair.
That's
it's
very
just
fair.
it's just the way it is now. Yeah, so I mean, extreme ownership was one of those things that I think it was a Ramsey book club that turned me onto that. The idea that it's I mean, no bad teams, only bad leaders. Believe in the mission, check the ego, cover and move, simplify, prioritize and execute, decentralized command, all of those things were incredibly practical. I consider it the most like practical leadership book that I've ever read, like something that I could absolutely go out and put to work. And then the follow-up book, which they would argue should have been the prequel, was Discipline Equals Freedom. And actually, this won't matter to anybody at home. So after I read that book, we actually started giving that out to our ZFI customers, and I gave them a mug that year that had
Love
the
it.
Discipline Equals Freedom screen printed on it. Was extremely passionate about that. Good to Great, man, I've listened to that, not exaggerating, probably 10 times. Like that when we took family vacations when my kids were young, that's what we did is we listened to audiobooks so they could probably all recite. Um,
That is one that needs to be read like every year. It's
Well,
yeah.
it
that's
absolutely
also
is.
provides confirmation to my theory of, my wife and I, when we have kids, I was like, when they're in their crib, like I'm having, I'm not lullabies playing in the background, but like Think and Grow Rich playing in the background, see what happens.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, I mean, I like first two, then what, and hedgehog concept. I use that all the time. I quote that almost as much and Stop Doing List. I quote those almost as much as I do Jim Carrey movies. I get an alrighty then almost every day. And then the comfort crisis, that's a recent one. I'm in a peer group through EntreLeadership, which is Ramsey's like coaching stuff. And my good friend Liz, she suggested that. And a year ago, that probably would not have hit with me the way that it does now. I'm in this kind of weird spot, like personally, like I'm a grandpa. I'm very middle aged, but I'm a grandpa, about to become grandpa a second time. A little over a year ago, September 14th of last year, I had a surgery to assist me with weight loss. So I dropped 120 pounds in the last year. And a lot of things that I never really was interested in kind of sound interesting to me now. Just like going and doing physical things. Like, so the concept of the Masogi,
Mhm.
is intriguing to me. So that one, I don't know that that's going to be the enduring, be on the enduring list, like extreme ownership and Good to Great are, but I think it might be because it's this weird, I like it's a part of me that I have paid no attention to for 25 years.
Have you
The
done
Um,
have
voice
you
is
done an
the
ice
voice is getting
bath?
louder.
An ice bath yet?
no, but I did turn the temperature down on my shower this morning. So
All right, good.
uh,
So a little mini Masogi.
Yep.
we're still
Baby
trickling
steps.
around that one. That baby steps, exactly. But it's a very interesting concept to me.
Yeah, it's pushing your body and your mind to the limit. Essentially that book in a nutshell is we've been brought up in a world and an environment in today's day and age where we run from climate controlled area to climate controlled car to climate controlled area. So pushing ourselves to the limit certainly helps sort of regulate, but then also doing extremely difficult things, gives you this like rush of dopamine, throughout it and afterwards when you complete it.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Well, and then doing it to yourself consciously, right? And then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I survived that today. Like, what's going to be worse than this today, right? If some customer yells at me or somebody's pissed at me, all right, cool. I've
Yeah.
done
Choosing
harder.
hard.
Yes.
To me, it's the concept of choosing hard. Like I've never struggled in my adult life. I can never remember a time that I struggled with choosing hard mentally, like mentally and emotionally. That is
You were
something
fine with it.
that I was okay with. Physically has been a different story. So I mean, it's real simple. Pick something that's novel. You have a 51% chance of success, and don't die.
Yep. And that
So
rounds you
I'm
out,
working on that.
right? I mean, if you got the other two, the physical just rounds you out, LJ.
Right.
So let's make it happen. And
There you go.
congrats on that journey, man. That's awesome. I'm excited to see where you go with it.
Thanks.
Love it. Well, LJ, this was impressive. This was fun. And
And
it's cool to
different.
see. Yeah, very different. Like, I obviously had a little bit of some insight as to the hard right we were going to take. I intentionally, gave LT the Spark Notes version of the Spark Notes version so he could have a little bit of a surprise and aha throughout today's conversation as well. But this was great, man. We appreciate you hanging out with us. And if folks want to follow along with what you're doing or have questions for you or what,
Want to acquire some hog semen?
yep.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
some hosting for mining, like where can they connect with you? How can they follow along? Where can
Sure.
they jump in?
Yep. Yeah. So for ZFI, we're on Facebook there. So it's just search ZFI Stud, ZFISTUD. Wildcat is on LinkedIn. So we're just Wildcat Blockchain on LinkedIn. You can't be in that space and not be on X as well. So we're Wildcat Block CHN because chain is too long. So Wildcat Blockchain CHN. Or I'm LJ Zoltenko on X as well. Most of my stuff is shit posting. But it's pretty tame compared to most.
Love it.
So out of all that,
you
people are gonna follow your personal account because that's what people
I damn
use
sure
search
am.
for.
just go follow Elon and you'll see basically the same things. I mean, I'm a huge
Yep.
Elon Musk fanboy. Any human being that can do the thing that nation states used to be uniquely capable of doing has got my vote. You can say what you want about the dude, but
No,
I'm down for that.
He's a G.
Changing
He's a
the
G.
game.
Love it. Well, LJ, appreciate you. LT,
Aaron, thanks
appreciate
again
you.
for
Aaron,
for
appreciate
making the
intro.
introduction.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity, guys.
You picking
All right.
corn or you picking beans when you get off here?
I'll be heading out to cut beans. We got about a day and a half left of cutting beans, and then we'll be switching over to corn. Yields are good.
Let's say may your yields be high, my friend. Good luck.
Much appreciated.
All right,
Later.
gentlemen. Peace.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces.